So, Barbara, we chose a very, I would say, intriguing title. And a couple of months ago, we were not even thinking about this was going to be possible, considering that the US economy was doing very well. Think about the unemployment rate, think about the GDP, think about a lot of many factors. Actually, people were thinking, oh, when is going to be the next fall of the stock market, and when will be the next recession, because we are doing too much well and the negative cycle is going to happen soon. And it did, but not because of, you know, the economy, but because of a virus that apparently was in a Chinese market. But it's interesting, guys, don't forget about this. Check the New York Times latest edition or the Washington Post latest edition. So we're not talking about Republican newspapers that are investigating, you know, some evidences that this virus was not engineered, but it might have come from a lab in China and not exactly from a market. But that's probably the topic for another discussion. So, Barbara, if the US economy is doing not well, and we have evidences today that is not, what could be the impact on the European Union that, as we know, is not doing very well either, or let's say hasn't been done well for the past few years? And, you know, I can talk about my country, of course, but I don't want to talk about my country. But let's say generally Europe was not going very fast. So what could be the implication of the US economy right now on Europe? And what do you see for the future?
Well, first of all, thank you for introducing, and thank you for running this wonderful roadshow, digital roadshow now in this way. And when we started it a couple of weeks ago, we all thought, well, by end of April, beginning of May, we can start traveling again, and then the events will happen. Maybe not in Italy, but in all the other European countries. But unfortunately, sadly as it is, we face a lot of issues, and travel bans is only one of them. So our American friends will definitely not come over for the roadshow, and we don't even know when we in Europe will be allowed to travel. But coming back to the effects, first of all, the spillover that we saw in 2008, 2009 from the US to Europe is nothing in contrast to what we see these days. Back then, or put it this way, 90% of all countries will experience negative growth rates in their GDP per capita now because of the Corona crisis. In a 2008-2009 so-called financial crisis, it was only 62% of the countries. If we look at the global output per capita, and this is IMF data that just was published yesterday, we see a minus or a lack of 4.2%, whereas in 2008, 2009, when another crisis hit from the US to Europe, it was minus 1.6%. So the numbers are not only multiplying, but it's a tragedy. The spillover effects are huge. However, and we have to see that Europe has been hit by the Corona crisis, by COVID first, then the US, or at least the first cases became publicly evident in Europe before the US started to react. So, and we of course reacted and shut down our economies, and it was literally a shutdown from one day to the other. And we also know that the destruction rate of the economy is also going exponentially and not gradually. Each day costs us a lot of money. Just in Italy, and I mean, you know that yourself, it costs each week costs almost 1% of GDP, almost 0.75%, in addition to what has already been happening. So coming back to your question, that Europe has been lousy with its growth rates in the past decade because we have not recovered from the so-called financial crisis. Many of the countries have not done their homework and have not made sure that their budgets are solid and sound, but they have still overspent. we see this downturn, and this is what the IMF is for, numbers are for Europe. It's an average 7.5% minus of growth in average. So in positive ways, we might come back next year with 5.8% again, but or 4.8, depending how you read the numbers, but that's a lot. So this is the numbers, just the numbers, but the consequences on the first, on the human and economic side, the costs that we see are tremendous. I'm not discussing the social issues that we will follow and see, but I would like to discuss the economic issues and see the implementation. If people can paid, and people will stop buying things. So the economy totally stops down. And the first thing that we now need to do is restart and get the production lines again moving. And this is for each and every single country a huge challenge. And what the European Union does is not much so far, apart from trying to build new Corona bonds, which eventually have now a new title, or creating huge umbrellas. And I'm sure that Michael Jäger will talk about those umbrellas in a minute. These effects of those umbrellas will be very bad. We have not recovered from the European stability mechanisms and the effects from 2009, 2010, because monetary policy and fiscal policy is put into one basket. And literally from the monetary policy front, we don't have any ammunition anymore. So creating bonds is simple, but who will pay for those debts? And Michael will also follow up on the debts that we built in Austria and Germany, and especially in Germany. So coming back to the first question, if the US fails and totally collapses, and it looks like that right now, then the consequences for Europe will be even worse. So
why, Barbara, sorry, let me interrupt you. You got a strong statement. Why are the US, I see there are a bunch of Americans online right now following us here on Zoom. Why are you saying the US economy is collapsing? You didn't say it's going bad, you said it's collapsing. It's a big statement.
There is shutdowns, literally, not like for us in Austria, when or in Europe, in some places when companies were allowed to continue production or to continue to produce things or deliver services. There are places in the US where you must not work, and you must not open your shop. And this is more dramatic than it was in Europe.
Wonderful, Barbara. Thank you so much. Now we have both our guests, but let me start. Welcome to Henrique, or Henrique has just joined us. But in order to warm you up, let's start with Michael. And Michael, Barbara has basically passed the ball to you. And invited you to talk about, Euro bonds or Corona bonds and, the stability mechanism. But before getting to that, I just want to introduce you to the many people that are following us right now. Michael Jäger is the Secretary General of the European Taxpayers Movement, the Taxpayer Association of Europe, since 1996. And since 2011, also Chief Executive Manager, CEO, of the European Economic Senate, the network of leading corporates in Europe. Since 1991, Michael is working for the Bavarian Taxpayers Association, and since the October of 2015, as a vice president, he's an entrepreneur, a consultant, and an author working as a watchdog of the taxpayers and the fighter for the less taxation. Okay, so this is a wonderful, I would say, bio, particularly when it comes to taxes. And I would love to talk about the who and how we spend money with the who, but we come back to that another time. So, Michael, sorry,
Michael is fine. Michael is fine. Michael is fine. Michael,
for
Michael
me, an Italian,
Michael is excellent. Michael is
Barbara
excellent.
said,
Fine.
we didn't do the homework, and I have a Swiss, a German, and an Austrian, and me as an Italian. I didn't feel very well. I felt in a very bad situation. But Mika, what is going on in Europe right now? And do you agree? Barbara came up with strong statement about the U.S. economy and the impact on Europe, and the fact that the measures Europe is trying to build no longer works.
So first I have to apologize for the connection. I hope I have a very calm hand, because I have no Wi-Fi and I had to move because I still work. It's not officially allowed, but I try to continue to work because we have to fight for taxpayers and corporates. But first, thank you for this interesting panel, and for sure, not only from the view of the taxpayers, as an economist, what is going on in Europe is really, it makes me crazy and angry. So we are fighting since years against Eurobonds, against harmonization of social security systems, against harmonization of taxes. We are in favor of market. And so we are the last man standing to fight against harmonization. We think and we see that there is now a misuse of the crisis to harmonize and to force nations to harmonize. And I think it's a wrong approach. And Barbara said, listen, he will give you some figures. If you see the liabilities and the payments only of Germany now, inside of Germany, it's 1.2 trillion euro, only because of the coronavirus. And it's Corona-19. What will we do with Corona 20, 21, 2030, when we have the next influenza? So this simple virus is destroying our economy. And we have heard today and yesterday we have heard the Chancellor, and today our Bavarian Prime Minister. We follow a little bit to Austria. Some shops will be open, but most business is still shut down. And that's why we relate. So if we say you will have a tremendous problem with US, because if we do not work, you will have a problem too, because we have our trade, our markets, and if we cannot produce and if we cannot buy, we will have, the trade is not functioning now. So I think we really depend on each other, and we need a strategy, also individual strategies. That was our Prime Minister said today, and I think he's right. If a mask is not protecting you against the virus of someone else, but you can protect people. We have to think about what everyone is able to do to minimize the risk of other people. What the way to like in a prison in Yale, to destroy mobility, to destroy everything is, I think, it was possible in March, but now we have 23 degrees. We will have at the end of April, starting May, we will have maybe 30 degrees. People with a flat will not stay in their flats. They want to go out. So you cannot shoot people down. They want to go out. And it's a human behavior. So we need, in the next 4 weeks, we need a solution how to minimize risk and how to restart business. And that's, for me, the challenge. And we follow in the Bavaria a little bit the Austrian approach. So step by step, look what is happening. Now markets with less than 800 square meters will be allowed next week to open. We will see, and we need an approach to how to say, to restart business. For sure, it must be. No one should die because of the coronavirus and the wrong decision. But if the markets are not functioning, also people will die because they will have panic, they will have depression, and that's what you can also read in scientific articles, that it's also a risk. And if the market is, we have a recession, on the worldwide recession, we will have a lot of losses too. And what we think and what we should do together in common, we need now something completely different. We need tax cuts. We need more money in the pocket of people that they are able to spend. We need less direct subsidies and support by the state, because what we see now with 1.2 trillion only in Germany, the money is lost, and if it's not used in an efficient way, it's nice. It shows that politicians wanted to act, but where is the efficiency? You spend every single state euro with the highest impact and growth, and that's not done now. And so I think we have to learn a lesson out of the crisis. We have to invest more in research and development. We have no state support or European support. We need more research and also more open source. We need more research development to fight this virus. A single virus is destroying economies. It's not only killing people, it's destroying a complete system, and that makes me afraid. And so we have to fight for the free market because politicians want to stop the free market movement. They want to control everything. The fundamental rights, constitutional rights in Germany should be changed by the wish of some politicians. And I completely disagree. We have 3,200 deaths people. That's really bad. But for me, it's not a reason to change our constitution. And that is going on in the politics on the German level. It's a so-called demography, but it's a really, really bad development. So that everything what our fathers and grandfathers developed after the Second World War is in risk. And so the challenge will be to fight for free market, to fight for economy, because we need people who work, who are able to pay taxes, because the state can only spend what we earn, what we pay.
Well, Michael, I want to interrupt you before going to Henrique, and apologize for doing that, but it's my job, you know, to try to make this a live discussion. But what I'm experiencing here, and then I give you a quick example, is the narrative that you are bringing here and discussing with us. Does it work right now when people are home, they don't have money, and in a way they are told, and they are afraid or told to be afraid to go out and restart business? And second, and here I come with my example. Yesterday, I was privileged enough to be on a conference call with a bunch of companies, and those companies have never stopped working. They reduced the number of employees, but they never stopped working. And by chance, they did not have cases of COVID-19. And they explained that very quickly they were able to set up a system, a model where, you know, let's say, let me make it very simple. If in the process, in the supply chain or in the process, production process, somebody gets sick, they are able to come in immediately, take that person,
yes,
bring that person home, monitor everybody that was around that person, kind of geolocalized within the company, and reestablish production. And they said, we are feeling a bit abandoned by government, not because government is not supporting us, but because government is not asking us how we're doing this, and how, as large corporation, of course, we could eventually help small business to go back to work in a, let's call it, safety condition. But your narrative concerns me, because if now I go outside here in Italy and say, we should go back to work, don't worry, market will fix things, I think I will have a gun on my head pretty quickly.
But that's not my narrative. Exactly what the big corporate describes. We, with our taxpayers office, we stopped work 1 week. Why? Because I was afraid with public transportation that one of my staff could be infected. Then we took a decision that everybody should come by car. It's not very ecologic, but that's the truth. And every room, one person, and security first. And it works. We have no infection, thanks to my staff and to the behavior and the rules, but we need a strategy.
Maybe I can come in while Michael's.
Yeah.
Sure, Barbara, go ahead, please. Then we have to go to Henrique, please.
Yeah.
Well, since Michael's phone is not working that much. I mean, many, especially service companies, of course, immediately switched to home office and worked. So did we. None of us had a day off. As a matter of fact, like you, we were all more productive and harder working than ever because you have to cover a couple of other additional things too. But the production, the travel industry, tourism industry, those are hit very hard. And the point is this so-called social distancing and is hard to do in a production line. But what you mentioned just, Pietro, is I think is very important that we learn from those people who are just doing it, and that and not strict to the one size fits all solutions that we are now trying everywhere, where we know some of them work but some don't. So best practices are very important, and we can only recommend that to the US to look at what we have learned and where our mistakes were.
Thank you, Barbara. Let me turn now to Henrique or Henrique now. Please apologize me for my European American accent. But Henrique Schneider is the head of economic policy at the Swiss, pay attention, Swiss Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises. He published regularly on the Austrian economics, Asian international politics. His latest books are about Uber, innovation in society, creative destruction and the sharing economy, and introducing the political philosophy of Hamfer. Henrique also teaches economics at the Nordakademie in Elstrom in Germany. So thank you for being here with us, despite you came a few minutes later, and you probably got the speech of Barbara and Michael. I assume you're based in Switzerland right now, and Switzerland is one of the countries with the highest toll of deaths, unfortunately, but still is a country that apparently is working. Am I right?
Let me put it like this. We are working, but selectively. That means the Swiss government declared some special state where they can govern without parliament, which for us, it's kind of difficult to swallow because we are a democracy used to people voting on everything, and at least the parliament having a say in everything. And now, since 1 month, the executive power has, if you want, all the power. What did they decide? They decided to partially lock down the economy. So people cannot go to restaurants, people cannot go to shop, they can only shop basic goods. The definition of basic goods is kind of crazy, but they can only shop basic goods. Most stores are closed, but if you work in an office, you can still go to the office. It's not that you have to stay at home or do home office. For example, our organization works every day. People come in the office, so I commute for 3 hours every day. It's not a problem. Also, the whole industry, and the industry is still 20% of the Swiss gross domestic product, GDP. I'm talking about the second sector. They are still working normally. There are construction sites working. There are people making machinery. They are working. So this has not been shut down, which is positive. It is positive. I'm coming back to something that Michael said, because from what we see, people are still getting paid and people are still buying a lot of stuff. Now, of course, they cannot go to the shop, but they can buy online. There is a boom of online shopping in Switzerland. It's not that Swiss people didn't enjoy to shop online before, but right now it's booming. So people just change their consumption habits. They don't spend their money in the restaurants. They spend their money online buying, I don't know what they buy online. But anyway, they're doing that. So and we are facing a recession too, but our recession will very probably not be on the demand side. It will be on the supply side.
So you are saying that there could be a Swiss model here that we can, use around Europe and even in the US. Would you say that?
The one reason that I oppose harmonization is that I think that there is a competition for models, but competition for models means that every model only works in one specific setup. This model is working right now. We don't know about the future in this setup. I don't know if it can be transplanted from here to Spain or from here to the US.
But
I still believe it's good not to shut down an economy. I mean, basically, it's good not to shut down an economy, and it's bad to shut down an economy from the economic point of view. So I believe the least you shut down, the better it is.
So let me put this way, okay? As a Swiss, you look at your neighbors or close, let's say close country, Germany, France, partly, you know, Austria on the other side, Italy. As usual, you smile and say, we're doing well, if they're not doing well.
No. Yeah, that's exactly the problem. The problem is we don't want to do well and them not to do well, because the most important trade partner and services partner and capital partner for Switzerland is Germany. Place 2 is the US. Third place is China, and then we have Italy, and then France. Interestingly, we have a better contact with the Italians than with the French. Anyway, if our main partners are doing badly, it means, especially if you think like me, that the crisis is going to be transmitted via the supply side, it means that we will suffer too. So what we want is not to excel and the other to fail. We want everyone to excel differently.
Now I'm starting for you because you ended exactly where I wanted you to end it. You talk about the global supply chain. Being Switzerland, a globalized country, a small, tiny country in the heart of Europe, but not part of the EU, but a globalized country. Would this crisis in the US, partly, I would say, partly in China and in the rest of the world, might affect your global supply chain, also starting from your position in the enterprise area? Is there a risk for global supply chains or not?
Yes, but different than many people think.
Yes.
But I don't. There is.
I'm coming to you, Michael. I'm coming. Let's Henrique.
Okay, let's provoke Michael. Maybe he will react to this. I will say the following: the big risk, the big risk, is not that some German car producer cannot produce and sell a car. The big risk is not that we will not be able to buy some computer chip from China. The big risk is that protectionism will be coming back in full swing. And that is the thing. All the supply chain disruptions that we're seeing now, they are bad, but they will be enshrined in law by the comeback of protectionism, and that is why it's bad.
Thank you, Eric, for this. I'm coming to Mike and then to Barbara. There is a question actually that comes exactly in there, and luckily I kept it for now, by Frederick. Frederick is asking, would a trade agreement between the US and EU be easier to make or more difficult in light of the economic effects of the pandemic? Now, you can answer this question in your reaction, Mike, to Eric.
Yes, but I think it would be, from my point of view, it would be the right approach, because only if we strengthen the markets, back to the roots, who is financing states? We taxpayers finance, corporates, individuals. So if you do not want to increase indebtedness, you can print money for sure. But short term, it will work. So we need to strengthen economies. So if we would have a trade agreement between US and Europe, I think it could boost economy for sure. But first we need to do our homework. So we have problems in Austria, in Germany, in different countries. And just to give you a very good example, who is responsible for costs in energy? At the state. We could cut down costs for corporates, for individuals now. If you say people have no money, it might be maybe for US, But in Germany, where we have a social security, very strong social security system, and if you have a short-time work period, 60% are paid by the government. So there's a minimum of risk for individuals, for sure. Insolvencies, corporates, if you take restaurants, others who had to close, and we did a lot of things on the political and try to have an impact to support corporates. But in reality, what will happen if we restart? If we look to Europe, we have a Green Deal, we have directives to follow. Corporates will not be able to pay taxes. So we need, if you go to our webpage, for instance, taxpayers-europe.org, you will find an approach, a discussion paper, what could be done on a European level and what could be done on a national level. Example, Germany, what we demand and what was already done. Just to give a view what is needed, and you have to do everything to support the market, and but not by a governmental demand or to print money. And I think what you said with the supply chain, for me, this crisis showed something very simple, but it's also market theory. Many corporates were using China to buy cheap products, half products. And if you want to minimize your risk in future, you need different markets. You need a market. If you sign only contract with Chinese corporates, it will work in the globalized world. It worked, but one single virus destroyed this chain. So for the future, US, Europe, each country should be able to look to masks. We have not a mask. If we have a law, Prime Minister said today, we do not make it by a law now, but everybody should go out with a mask if he goes shopping. If you cannot buy this mask, what should you do? So you need a different approach to solve these problems, and I'm convinced of markets, and I dislike state regulation. We need some regulation now, but I hope that we will be able to support corporates, different branches, for sure minimize risk. Nobody should go out on the road. I totally agree, by the way. If you have more deaths people in Italy than we have in Germany, but if you see the media now starts in Germany, listen, when they will open, because people will go out. You should respect in Germany, spring and summer are coming, and people will not stay at home. You cannot
lock them in.
It will not work. It will not work. Look with via webcam in Germany, Munich last weekend. People go out. So we need a better approach.
There's also it would be an interesting for a debate, a large debate with everybody, people from the 27 and more countries, not just in the EU, but around Europe and inside Europe, how the different countries or even the different regions, because if we look at even Italy, there is a big fight between Lombardia, that is in a deep crisis, and Veneto. Of course, Lombardia has totally different characteristics than Veneto or any other region inside around Italy. But today, one of the news in some Middle East media was Belgium, and how Belgium is dealing with the COVID-19, where it seems that everything is almost closed, but people are going around, and there is a high number of deaths, but at the same time, people are like living normally. So that's another discussion, but it brings us, Barbara, into your field, because here we ended up talking about, at the end, what government, we kind of forgot about the US. We leave them there for a moment. It's what Europe can do to avoid an impact of a US crisis, because I like your approach. Before you talk as a European. You said, whatever happens in the US, we have to do something. So what do we have to do now to avoid this narrative that I mentioned earlier of the need for the state intervention? Because here in Italy, and I assume all the rest of Europe, in Spain, for instance, the narrative is we need more government involvement.
Well, first of all, start up the economy again and do this as fast as possible. Of course, guarantees have been provided. In Austria, we have a special labor law for those people who, in order not to set them free and to put them on the unemployment list, we call it Kurzarbeit, and some enterprises are being supported. Well, we'll see, supposedly supported, and it worked back in we had an experience from 2009, 2010, 2011 back then. So this is one thing, but actually one should allow enterprises to work. One should support everything to get equity and own capital going and rise this. Then allow deregulation, not only of the labor markets, but and much more flexibility also in the labor laws, because this is also one reason we have expensive labor. Many companies bought from other countries, China and others, because there was cheap labor. We have to be competitive on this front as well. Then digitalization is a huge opportunity right now. 6 weeks ago, nobody in Europe, or actually in Austria, thought that homeschooling would be an option, with all problems involved right now that we see. But still, now it's running and it's working. Our kids probably will not see a school until fall or late summer. And the same is true for universities. So homeschooling is working. And everybody said, no, you must not do that. Then of course, this all will trigger our creativity. And not only in the way we communicate as we do right now, but it's in many other fields of economics. What Michael already mentioned, and this is, I think, most important, unleash unleash not only the economies, but unleash the taxpayers, unleash the businesses by cutting taxes and not raising taxes, and create the right incentives. This should be done all across Europe in order to go back to normal and to make sure that this ditch is a V-shaped one and not a U-shape. And then, of course, what would be the best thing, having a vaccine in order to get all these travel bans lifted, because despite the fact this works well, once we communicate via Zoom or any other nice tool, I think it's also important to have your face-to-face meetings. And after all, we are all social beings. But again, I would say most important thing is leave the markets, let the markets work, let the businesses, the enterprises work, and by that we will solve most of the problems ourselves. And
thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much. Since we're running out of time, a quick answer by all of you. Now, we left the U.S. It was our title, but we kind of flew back to Europe quickly. Henrique, from a Swiss perspective, would the euro bonds or Corona bonds work for you in Europe?
No, no, and a third time no. I can give you two answers why not. First of all, despite everything everyone's saying, the European Union or the Eurozone is not an optimal monetary realm. Sorry, it's not an optimal monetary area. There are still too many imbalances, and you see the different spreads between the credit lines, between the countries. This all means that this bond would have to be held together by some countries that are stable and will be virtually diluted by the non-stable countries. There is also, however, an even more important factor against the Corona bond. Well, let me explain this. I am not a big fan of the European Union, and I don't want the markets to have an interest in the European Union to function. If you have an euro bond, if you have a corona bond, then all of a sudden, all buyers of the bond will have a continued, a vested interest of seeing this European amalgamation of countries work. So the markets would be depending on European policy to get back the money they have put in. I don't think that that's a good reinforcement, because I believe in competition. Competition triggers innovation, and competition can only happen if we have different countries with different systems and not one big regulatory body.
Thank you very much. Michael, briefly, you agree or disagree here?
How shouldn't I agree with someone from Switzerland? For sure, he's right. No, but
he would be proven right.
No, but to give a better answer, why Corona bonds? If you look, we pay in Germany, and we pay 1.2 trillion now. And should we cover the costs for Italy? For sure, if we could, we could try, but it will not work. And if you look to the indebtedness of these countries, before Corona, there was a big question to harmonize the debts. But sorry, it's not possible. I would love to ask you to pay my bill, my indebtedness. Would you do it? I would say, thank you very much, Barbara, everybody. It's stupid. We have European Stability Mechanism. We have European Investment Bank. We have European Central Bank. So there's enough money. Money is so cheap now. It's not a question of money and liquidity. It's just that it's misused, that we take over the debts of other countries. And what's then? If there would be only one possibility, what was not working with Greece already. If someone wants money from my side, I define the rules, and you have strictly to follow, or you have to pay it back. And nobody in Italy, nobody in France, nobody in Spain would accept this. So if you make Corona bonds, you can throw the money away. It's lost money. And that's the wrong approach. We should assist for sure, but first, the subsidiarity principle is a basic principle of the European Union. You are responsible your own. That's the first principle of our fathers who created the European Union. And not to say, first we harmonize the debts. It's a complete wrong approach, completely wrong approach.
Thank you, Michael. Barbara, you speak Italian. You know the word solidarity. That is what Spain and Italy are pushing. Give me, if I have to call my prime minister now, I'm going to say, hey, give up, because these guys are going to kill you.
but you also know that Italy was most successful when it was split up in various small provinces
and one belongs
city
to
states. Yeah, I'm not about that. But let me just give you a final note that there will be a study, a roadmap for economic recovery after the coronavirus, and this will be launched within the next couple of days by the Austrian Economic Center with a whole bunch of international of our friends and our entire team. So just look out for that, and there is a roadmap, and as we say, markets work, let them work.
Barbara, so much for being here with us and helping out hosting this event. Let me thank Martin, that is the guy that makes this possible behind the scene and is always, sharply helping us. Let me thank from Germany, Michael, and let me thank Henrique from Switzerland for this beautiful debate that was live on YouTube, and it's also being recorded, so it's available on the Free Market Roadshow website. We're not going to meet in Rome in a week from now, in a month from now, talking about Eurobonds. I would say now, luckily, we're not going to meet there, but we're just online. Thank you, everybody, for following us on YouTube and here. Next meeting will be next week at 3:30 on Thursday, and the topic will be intellectual property as the day of the property rights is approaching, and we want to discuss property right with a great panel like today. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you to everybody that follow us, and take care.